meet quorum, and so we won't be able to hold elections or approve last year's minutes. But I think, as you all know, the process, you do have open seats, and so we can, you all can appoint someone to those seats at any time during your regular meetings in the year, and then otherwise we'll be taking care of kind of regular business at next year's meeting when we will hopefully have quorum. And essentially what we do is we'll just skip over kind of these formal meeting pieces, but we'll still go into the presentations, and we would be glad to answer any questions that you have. And then we can talk more about filling those seats if you'd like, or really anything else that you all want to talk about. This isn't a formal SDIC board meeting. It's a meeting of landowners. So you should just like consider, shouldn't be making any decisions related to SDIC, but certainly discussion related to the presentation is within bounds. So I think that's all I have. Peggy, is there anything you'd like to say at the top?
No, just to thank everybody for being here and thanking the board every day for their involvement and time, as well as staff.
So I think we can just jump right into the staff presentations, and Janet's up first.
Hi, that was quick. Okay, I'm Janet Olson. I'm the MCDD Finance Manager, and the financial review for 2018-19 is what we are presenting. The audited financial report was completed by James Marta. He's been our auditor for the last 5 years, using the accrual method in accordance with all GAAP standards. The district received a clean financial review free of any material misstatements. I would like to say that Sandy, based on their budget, that they are not required to have an audit, but they do a review of the same material. So it's just a little bit less work, a little cheaper for us too, which is good. If you have any questions, you can obtain a copy of the district's financial audited report out on our website, or you can always contact me at my email address, or I also have my cell phone number listed on the website. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And we can move on to district operations update from Bill.
Well, good afternoon, all. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep my video off. I'm having some trouble with that feature of my computer. But I do have 4 slides to share with you as a recap of what has happened regarding projects and operations this year. So next slide, please. So we'll start off on the internal drainage portion of your district. As you know, the drainage master plan was drafted and presented to you, as well as the City of Troutdale City Council. That report included a series of capital improvements as well as some programmatic improvements. This slide shows the locations from, let's see, they're shown in the yellow dots here of the capital improvements. And there are, of course, the work at Sandy Pump Station. There's recommendation to replace for capacity and because of its current elevation. There's also some recommendations regarding the outfall pipes. There's recommendations to make improvements at the Salmon Creek culvert under Marine Drive, just directly south of the pump station, as well as culverts for Errata Creek under Sundial, Marine Drive, Rogers Circle, and the Troutdale Airport. Some work at Dunbar Avenue down towards the southern portion of your company, and of course the drainage pipes under the cross levee and the gate tower. There was one recommendation outside of SDIC along Columbia River Highway underpass, but more details, as you know, are in that report. The other photo I wanted to share up here in the top right of this slide is an image on top of the water tower the city of Camas owns on Prune Hill. This is a common place where not only, well, with a number of agencies and utilities use in the area for installing repeaters, and that's what those towers, those poles are behind Josh, Randy, and Corey up there standing on top there. This is a recognition that the SCADA communication upgrade project has finished, and now we've shifted over to a much more reliable radio frequency system. So we appreciate your investment in making those upgrades. Next slide, please. On the levy side, I have two things I wanted to highlight. One, on the right side, we've made, I think we're almost finished with the work to unearth and rehabilitate the tow drains. These are pipes in the levee system, and they were buried for many years, but we unearthed them and were able to restore them and put some protection, bank protection around those sites. You can see there's still some work to be done from this photo to revegetate some of the ditch that allows the water to drain away from these tow drains. So that will be happening this fall and next spring. In addition, you'll pay for the inspection and cleaning of the relief wells. There are 2 relief wells next to the Sandy pump station. These were put in for purposes of helping address historic seepage in that area. And Mark Wilcox is going to be presenting those results to you in an upcoming meeting, as well as forwarding that information on to the Corps of Engineers. Next slide, please. Wanted to give you a glimpse of the what type of development activity has been happening in SDIC since the last landowner meeting. This is, of course, the aerial view of your special district, and you can see there are 12 active development reviews that the district MCD is tracking on behalf of SDIC. The photo on the bottom left represents a new safety improvement that we were able to incorporate into a development review. This was built and paid for by the developer who wanted to install a new Taco Bell just off the interstate off-ramp. That's, I guess, I'm not sure, sorry, I don't know what exit number that is, but it's the primary off-ramp into SDIC near Taco Bell and TA trucking and so forth on the south side. So this was a huge improvement for us to be able to maintain this. Actually, this is the upper portions of Salmon Creek, and we're going to be able to maintain this area much more safely in moving forward. So speaking of moving forward, next slide. A couple things to highlight. One is that this year we'll be having an U.S. Army Corps of Engineers periodic inspection on your special district. This type of inspection only happens once every 5 years, so it's a more comprehensive inspection than the routine ones that happen less frequently. So this will begin in December and should be, at least the field work should be done before the end of the calendar year. On the top right is a photo of some materials that should be underwater, but broke off in the Sandy pump station wet well. So we don't want to have miscellaneous materials just lying around in the wet well. They have a function in there. And in particular, these type of features are important because they help reduce air entrainment into the pump. So we don't want air, or at least large quantities of air, going into the pump, because that can lead to cavitation. And you just paid for a brand new pump and a nice repaired pump. So We appreciate your investment to make repairs in the wet well to replace items like this, and that will happen this year. The bottom image represents or highlights the gravity outfalls that are located just next to the Sandy pump station. This year, we're going to be doing some investigation and some pre-design work in order to get an assessment of what's needed to make these repairs here. And as I've stated before, this will be an opportunity for you to touch base again with this project to make sure that this is the right investment moving forward to finish design and construction. And that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Bill.
All right, thanks.
And I just wanted to point to a question that was raised in the chat. So Ken Underton asked how many votes we had attending for this meeting and how many we need for quorum. We responded, but just as a reference, we do need 50% of the total acres in the district in order to hold elections. We currently have about 39% of those present, so we would need 151.5 more acres in order to meet those requirement thresholds. And we also have one more attendee. Just wanted to flag especially for the presenters, Ray Young, Troutdale City Manager. Thank you for joining us. We're just going through staff presentations. And next we have Colin Rowan.
Hello, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I called in on my phone because my internet has been a little clunky, so my mouth and sound may not line up. So that's weird. Thank you very much for having me here today. Colin Rowan, Deputy Director at MCDD and in the Levy Ready Columbia program. And today we'll just be giving a brief review of the Army Corps of Engineers feasibility study and some updates from the last time that we've had a landowner meeting. And I know this is mostly the board, so the board has had a number of presentations on the different refinements and optimization that the Corps has gone through since the January publishing of the tentatively selected plan. And so at an October 28th community update meeting, a lot of those updates that the Corps had been providing to the drainage district boards were brought to the public. And I have a link to all of that, both the presentation, the slides, and the video of what the Corps and MCDB staff presented on October 28th. But I'm just going to touch on the highlights. So Cotton, go to the next slide. Just as a quick reminder, the feasibility study was awarded in 2018 as part of a storm supplemental declaration by Congress, which awarded a number of feasibility studies around the country that were looking to proactively address flood risk. And so the primary goals of our feasibility study are to reduce flood damages, to reduce threats to life safety, and then also to increase resiliency and reliability of our system, which I think is particularly important considering SDIC's location on the far eastern side of the system, and also the fact that the western border is a cross levee. So cross levees are really important to the Corps' study because they see the system having some level of reliability in that redundancy. So you'll see that we have a number of projects that look at overall increasing the function of the levee and then reducing those flood damages. So as a quick overview, that graphic really illustrates how the Corps looks at flood risk. They really are looking at sort of fragility or areas of concern in the system, what those hazards are. And they use an equation, which is that flood risk equals the probability or the likelihood of flood times the consequences of the flood. So for SDIC, they're taking a look at all the things that happen behind the levees, and particularly those things that have a national economic development benefit. so traded sector or other things that allow for continuity of operations, including power lines, gas, and other things that do touch SDIC. So next slide, please. This just goes through where we are in the process, and I won't get too deep into it, but I had noted that we started in October of 2018. The Corps was able to use a lot of the work that drainage districts and the Levee Ready Columbia Partnership had done to really accelerate the amount of work that they were able to do. So this was a 3-year, $3 million study. Normally it's split between the non-federal sponsors and the federal government. Because of the storm supplemental, it was 100% paid for by the federal government, which is great for us. We were able to publish the tentatively selected plan that the Corps recommended in January. That recommendation was for what they call uniform level of protection. And that really looked at a number of places in the system that either were too low or the levee itself was insufficient as far as its strength to provide a uniform level of protection. In the past month, they've gone through the refinement process, really striving towards the production of the final recommended plan, which would be submitted to Army Corps of Engineers headquarters in DC in April. And that is contingent on the recommendation of that being submitted by the drainage district boards. And so you as a SDIC board are part of that non-federal sponsor group that needs to make the recommendation that it is submitted. Once it's submitted, then it is in DC for a while, where there's a lot of continued internal review throughout the Corps. And ultimately the goal is to receive a chief's report about this time, October of 2021, which really is to give the recommendation that the plan moves forward. So that ends this 3-year feasibility study phase, but it's really just the beginning. At the end of the feasibility study phase, the Corps develops about 30%, they call it 35%, 30 to 35% design. And from there, they actually need to have a number of reviews that happen both at the Office of Management and Budget, as well as the Assistant Secretary of the Army's for Civil Works office, which oversees the overall Corps' work program. Then if we receive the authorization to go forward and it's funded in a work plan, it's a 2-year study that's called pre-engineering design. And so that 2-year study, we're hoping, begins in 2022, and that would allow us to optimistically move towards construction of these projects in 2025. So that's sort of the optimistic best case scenario. The construction wouldn't happen all at one time. There would be one project or a number of projects to start it, but because there's so many projects that are needed to modernize the system, they would probably start in one location and then be able to ramp it up and complete them all over a few-year period. So next slide, please, Kevin. So just wanted to quickly note the projects that are specific to San Diego Drainage Improvement Company. And so this really has not changed from what was in the tentatively selected plan. There are really 3 issue areas that the Corps has identified that need to be remediated. So first is a replacement of the SDIC pump station. This echoes what you heard from Bill around the findings of the Drainage Master Plan. The Corps is really looking through a slightly different lens, but they want to make sure that if there's an internal flood event, that the integrity of the levees is preserved. So that's really their main focus when they do an analysis, but it definitely is the same message found in the Drainage Master Plan, even if some of the modeling parameters that are used are slightly different. So that's been recommended. There also is a section roughly from the Sandy Pump Station over to Sundial Road that needs to be bolstered on the landward side. And that's because the Corps has noted some fragility concerns if that levee is loaded there, where there could be a potential breach scenario. And there's a slight amount of spot raises that are needed on the levee crest in 2 locations. One where the access road to the boatyard that's to the north, just out of frame in the picture, is located. There's a slight low spot there. And then there's a slight low spot right at the entrance to the Georgia Pacific shipyard. And so those are noted with the arrows. On the southeastern side of SDIC, there's also concern with the right by the on-ramp to I-84. And so this is where there is a ODOT project with a swale that's located there, as well as a bike path entrance. And so the Corps has identified the need to raise that area up, but they would be able to both preserve the function of the ODOT swale, as well as be able to replace access for the bike path there. So that completes the list of identified projects for SDIC. And kind of, I think the next slide just has, if anyone wants to take a look at the full presentation from the Corps and MCDD staff, or want to listen to the recording, it is available right there. And I can add it to the chat as well, so you can just click on the link. So thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Any questions for Colin? Great. Thank you so much. And for our final presentation, I will hand it over to Peggy.
Good afternoon, and I just want to thank everyone for being here, our board members, and in addition to staff, and recognizing that we are doing our best for landowner meetings based on our COVID situation. And so we appreciate you being here. We also appreciate your patience as we go through this process. And I also just want to thank Janet for keeping our financial system on the straight and narrow, and also give a lot of kudos to Bill and Randy and the rest of the operations team and the engineering team in assuring that we maintain and operate the system to its highest standards. And also Colin for presenting the feasibility study. We have been busy this year. It's not been a year where much grass has grown under our feet. And I wanted to, next slide, talk a little bit about the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District that you all have probably heard of. This was legislation that was passed in the 2019 legislature under Senate Bill 431. And this is a culmination of work with the Levee Ready Columbia Group, the community members, and the districts in the recognition that really these 4 systems historically that were developed in the late 1919 to 1921 were really developed from in advance in recognition of agricultural protection and agricultural land. A lot has changed over the last 100 years, and now it really is a system that operates and is interdependent. And the Senate Bill 431 recognizes that the legislature recognized that this is one of the most important infrastructure systems in the state as well as the region. It protects a tremendous amount of significant industrial land as well as commercial and residential properties. And it protects a major transportation system, whether it be the airports, whether it be the interstate highways, etc. So it is a critical system that's needed and recognized by the state as being that. In addition, it was also recognized in the Senate Bill 431 that it really does, this region and area is a significant community and cultural history that should be represented and acknowledged and remembered, and that through this process and this new, more modern form of governance, it provides significantly a larger toolbox on how to maintain the overall system, and has a legislative authority and financial capacity to carry out its business. So next slide, please. I think the important thing about this slide is a recognition. These drainage districts or improvement company main purpose has always been to focus on flood risk management, protect people and property, and respond to flood emergencies. The new district has that role, but has expanded mandates to also address improve water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, floodplain restoration, and landscape resiliency, to promote social equity and social justice, to address making sure that we are prepared for climate change and the impact of it, and to recognize the cultural history of the area. So those are new directives. Many of you have already seen this map before, but I'll go through it quickly. As you see, in red outlined are the existing drainage representative districts within the system, and SDIC obviously on the far right, but that whole system is interconnected. The blue area represents the overall watershed boundary, and the gray area outlines the limits to the urban district in the county of Multnomah. And this district's boundaries are now going to be, is likely to be, beyond the existing drainage districts, and the revenue structure that we'll be taking into consideration will look to who's benefiting from this district, from the system itself, and the costs incurred from those benefits. Next slide, please. As you know, there's a little different in how the board membership is represented in the existing districts. We have their elected landowners, which based on acreage, which we were wanting to address today. But the new urban flood safety water quality district that was pulled together in May of this year, is represented by 13 elected members from the various public jurisdictions and the drainage districts, and 5 governor appointees. This district, these individuals, and this function of this initial board is to set up the form of government, set up the policies and procedures to establish a new government, as well as one of their biggest mandates is also to determine and develop a revenue structure to ensure the economic viability of this district. And then once that has been done, a permanent board is elected by the public with 4 governor appointees for that board. Next. Thank you. This is just to kind of summarize a little bit of what we've already covered today. And then there's a lot of things going on within the districts. And so if you'll notice, the top represents timeline. And on the left, you'll notice that we're talking about SDIC, the initial urban flood safety water quality district activities and the Corps of Engineers and the activities associated with them. You'll also see there's a dark line vertically around May of 2025. That's when it's anticipated that we'll go from the initial board to a newer permanent board. And so just to clarify, SDIC will continue to operate, have elected board members as through the landowner process, and collect assessments up to 2025. In the meantime, this initial urban flood safety water quality district has been formed, had its first meeting in May. It will continue to make decisions and contracts, develop contracts, establish policies, etc., as well as working toward developing a revenue structure that represents costs and benefits of individuals that individuals receive from the system. Once that's started, they'll need to start collecting revenue. There would be no intent at any time to double dip on revenue from the assessments versus the new rate structure. That needs to be ironed out on the timing, but assuming the legislation does require that we are collecting money at least 6 weeks from 6 months from when the new district, before the new district held its elections. Elections would be held in May of 2025. And then once that new permanent board is established, it will call for a dissolution of the existing districts, as you see in the orange line with SDIC. And then they have up to a year they can be called for dissolution by the new district. They have up to a year to complete that dissolution if it's needed. And then an overlay of this is also what will continue to go on, which is the work with the Army Corps of Engineers. We've gone through the feasibility, the initial parts of 2/3 of the way through the feasibility study, and it indicates, as Colin had indicated, in October of 21, we should get the chief's report. We will work hard to get funding for the pre-engineering and design function, which usually takes about 2 years, and then going through efforts for getting appropriations and funding for the construction of the new of the improvements that were identified. And all of that will be going on at the same time. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy, and everyone who's presented. We are at the questions and new business part of our agenda, so I just open the floor for any questions or announcements. Yes, Tom, I see your hands raised.
Karen, what's the next step to fulfill our landowner meeting obligations? Is it the mandate reduces down to a lesser percentage?
Yes. And I need to double check on our timing because SDIC obviously is a little bit different than the other drainage districts. So I need to double check. I'm sorry, that is an answer I should have ingrained. But we're doing all 4 of the landowner meetings over these 2 weeks. And so to be honest, the various statutes are kind of swirling in my head right now. So I'll get back to you all on exactly like what requirements are, because I'm recalling that we could hold another landowner meeting was like an option in SDIC previously, like in the same year to attend quorum. So let me double check.
Yes. So SDIC within 60 days after the date of the meeting can call another meeting with 25% quorum only required.
Thanks, Kelly. I knew you.
Well, first, Sandy's always a little bit different, so I've got the bylaws up here prepared in case something came up.
So we're obligated to have an official landowner meeting that fulfills Oregon statute. So staff, you'll meet that clock then?
So it says May. So I think it's permissive whether you want to attempt that. So it says when members owning a majority of the votes entitled to be cast, which is quorum for this meeting, or the proxies do not attend the regular annual meeting called under the bylaws, the directors may call another meeting of the members on a date that is not later than 60 days after the date of the meeting in which quorum was not obtained. And so I think the idea there is just to kind of not maintain a situation where only 25% quorum is required. And so, and I think it would be appropriate, especially now that we're looking at holidays and COVID and all these reasons why people won't be attending, to take advantage of that 60 days to get the meeting in and get any business attended to. But then after that, it would go back up to the higher numbers.
So to have discussion on this matter, we would have to set this at our next SDIC meeting, or could we have discussion at this time?
No, you guys cannot be in session as SDIC board because we didn't notice it.
Emily, can we get this on our next calendar? Just, I think we need, I'm not inclined to have another landowner if we're just to have the three of us meet again and meet the 25%.
That sounds good. Yeah, I can put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
So I just want to appreciate MCDD for supporting SDIC over the years. Last year expressly, there's a lot of change going on, and I, for one, as Multnomah County representative, truly appreciate the work that you're doing for us. So
I will second that. It's been a year of challenges and changes, and you guys have done a fantastic job keeping all these initiatives going and not stalled. There's a lot going on in your shop, and I just from the port's perspective, we appreciate everything you're doing, and you know, keep up the good work, and let us know if there's anything from the board perspective we can do to help.
And I just want to thank both Emily and Karen for pulling this together in almost a seamless way. And you know, when it's seamless, there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes to make this happen. So I did want to make that shout out.
Thank you, Peggy and everyone. We can, unless there's any other questions or announcements, move forward with adjourning the meeting. And we just want to remind people that information about the presentations that were given today, as well as staff information, is all available on the website. This will be recorded, and as Emily mentioned at the beginning, and so we will be posting that recording on our website along with other meetings that have been happening over the last 6 months. So without further ado, thank you very much for coming. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.